in the Grand Hall of the Patent Office in Washington, D.C., on the night of March 6, 1865. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meats, expensive cigars, and fresh evergreen. It was President Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural ball, a crowd of over 4,000 guests, diplomats, politicians, generals, and wealthy citizens, jostled for position around a massive buffet table. The centerpiece of this lavish feast, coveted above all else, was a steaming, dark, gelatinous broth, green turtle soup. The crowd was so desperate for a taste that order completely broke down. Guests surged forward, climbing over furniture, breaking dishes, and fighting to scoop the rich liquid into their bowls. It was a culinary riot for a dish that represented the pinnacle of 19th century luxury. If you were to walk into a restaurant in London, New York, or Paris today and see turtle soup on the menu, the reaction would be entirely different. You would not see a stampede of eager diners. Instead, you would likely see protesters, health code violations, and eventually the police. In the modern West, eating a turtle is met with intense psychological aversion, moral outrage, and strict legal penalties. The creature has been firmly categorized as endangered wildlife, a beloved children's pet, or a cartoon superhero. Yet, in East Asian cities like Hanoi or Guangzhou, turtle remains a prized delicacy. Here, the Chinese softshell turtle, known locally as baba, is celebrated, prized for its unique textures, and served in bubbling clay pots at family banquets. How did an animal that once sat at the summit of Western gastronomy become a profound cultural and legal taboo, while remaining a culinary treasure in the East? The answer is not a simple matter of differing tastes. It is a story of ecological collapse, culinary deception, a shift in human psychology, and a fundamental divergence in how two different cultures chose to interact with the natural world. To understand how the West lost its taste for turtle, we must first understand how it acquired it. The obsession began in the mid-18th century, driven by the expansion of the British Empire. British sailors navigating the Caribbean discovered that the green sea turtle was not only abundant but uniquely suited for long-term sea travel. In an era before refrigeration, keeping meat fresh on a ship was a constant battle. Sailors had to rely on salted beef and dry biscuits, which often led to scurvy and malnutrition. But the sea turtle was different. It could survive for weeks or even months on the deck of a ship without food or water, requiring only a damp cloth to stay alive. They were, in essence, living cans of fresh meat. When these ships returned to British ports, they brought the turtles with them. What started as a practical food source for sailors quickly captured the imagination of the London elite. The meat of the green sea turtle was unlike anything Europeans had tasted. It was incredibly rich, with a flavor profile that writers described as a complex cross between veal, chicken, and beef. But its most prized feature was its texture. The green sea turtle possesses a layer of cartilage under its shell called calapash and callipee. When simmered for hours, this cartilage dissolves into a thick, gelatinous substance that gives the soup an incredibly luxurious, velvety mouthfeel. By the early 19th century, turtle soup had become the ultimate status symbol in Europe and North America. In London, no Lord Mayor's banquet was complete without it. To present a whole turtle at a dinner party was the ultimate display of wealth, equivalent to parking a luxury sports car in the driveway today. A single 100-pound turtle could cost the equivalent of a working man's monthly wage. Across the Atlantic, American presidents fell under its spell. George Washington, John Adams, and Abraham Lincoln all served it at state dinners. William Howard Taft loved it so much that he brought a personal chef to the White House, specifically to prepare his favorite snapping turtle soup. But this luxury carried the seeds of its own destruction. The Western appetite for turtle soup was built entirely on wild harvesting. Because green sea turtles are migratory animals with complex life cycles, they could not be easily domesticated or farmed. For more than a century, ships systematically pillaged the nesting beaches of the Caribbean and the Atlantic. By the late 19th century, the inevitable happened. The wild populations collapsed. As the supply of green sea turtles dwindled, the price skyrocketed, pushing the dish far out of reach for anyone but the ultra-wealthy. Yet, the demand for the flavor remained. This scarcity triggered one of the most successful culinary deceptions in history, the rise of mock turtle soup. British cooks realized that the most defining characteristic of authentic turtle soup was not the specific flavor of the turtle meat itself, but the rich, gelatinous texture created by the dissolved collagen. They set out to replicate this texture using cheaper, more abundant domestic animals. They found their solution in the calf's head. By boiling a calf's head, complete with the skin, brains, and tongue for hours, they could extract massive amounts of gelatin. Combined with beef broth, hard-boiled eggs, and a heavy hand of Madeira wine, the resulting soup was remarkably similar in texture and appearance to the real thing. Mock turtle soup was an instant sensation. It democratized a luxury flavor, allowing middle and working-class families to enjoy the illusion of high society dining. Canneries, including Heinz and Campbell's, began mass-producing mock turtle soup by the millions. The imitation became so famous that it entered popular culture. In Lewis Carroll's 1865 novel, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, the mock turtle is depicted as a melancholy creature, with the head, hind hooves, and tail of a calf, weeping because he is merely an imitation, a living recipe for a soup. This culinary substitution had a profound, unintended consequence. Over the course of several generations, the vast majority of Westerners grew up eating the imitation rather than the original. The actual taste of real turtle faded from the collective memory. When people thought of turtle soup, they were actually thinking of calf's head and beef broth. By the time real turtles became completely unavailable, the public had already transitioned to a substitute, making the loss of the original ingredient painless. By the mid-20th century, the final blow to the Western consumption of turtles was delivered not by culinary fashion, but by law and psychology. In the 1970s, the environmental movement gained global traction. Scientists warned that sea turtles were on the brink of extinction. In response, international treaties and national laws were enacted. The Endangered Species Act of 1973 and the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or CITES, in 1975 made it a serious federal and international crime to harvest, sell, or transport sea turtles. As the legal doors slammed shut, a parallel psychological shift took place. In the West, turtles were reclassified in the public consciousness. They ceased to be viewed as seafood or livestock and became wild animals deserving of protection. Simultaneously, the pet industry began importing millions of red-eared sliders, tiny freshwater turtles sold in plastic bowls to children. Millions of Western children grew up feeding, cleaning, and naming their pet turtles. This emotional connection was cemented by popular culture. The release of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise in the late 1980s transformed the reptile into a pop culture icon of justice and friendship. Culturally, the West had crossed a psychological line. You do not eat a creature that is protected by global law, kept as a household pet, or depicted as a pizza-loving superhero on television. The taboo was complete. But while the West was outlawing the turtle, East Asia was taking a completely different path. In countries like China and Vietnam, the consumption of turtle, specifically the Chinese softshell turtle, or baba, never declined. To understand why, we must look at a fundamental difference in how these cultures managed their food supply and viewed nutrition. Unlike the West, which relied almost exclusively on wild, oceanic green sea turtles, East Asian culinary tradition focused on freshwater species. The Chinese softshell turtle is highly adaptable, lives in muddy rivers and ponds, and is much smaller than its oceanic counterparts. Crucially, it is highly domesticable. As wild populations faced pressure from growing populations, East Asian farmers did not abandon the dish. Instead, they pioneered turtle aquaculture. By the late 20th century, softshell turtle farming had become a massive industry in China and Vietnam. Today, specialized aquaculture farms produce hundreds of millions of softshell turtles every year in highly controlled environments. Because the supply is entirely sustainable and farmed, East Asian consumption of softshell turtles does not threaten endangered wild species, allowing the culinary tradition to continue without legal bans or ecological guilt. Furthermore, the persistence of turtle consumption in the East is deeply rooted in traditional Chinese medicine and the philosophy of food as medicine, known as Yishi Tongyuan. In this belief system, food is not merely fuel or pleasure. It is a tool to balance the body's internal energies. The softshell turtle is classified as a highly potent health food. It is believed to nourish the yin, cool the blood, reduce internal heat, and boost the immune system. The gelatinous skin of the softshell turtle, rich in natural collagen, is highly valued for its skin rejuvenating properties. Because turtle is viewed as a functional health food that provides tangible biological benefits, the demand has remained resilient. It is not viewed as a historical relic or a bizarre novelty. but as a vital part of a holistic approach to health and longevity. Today, the divide between how the West and the East view the turtle is absolute. To a Western observer, the softshell turtle, with its leathery shell, pointed snout, and aquatic habits, appears unappetizing, carrying risks of foodborne illnesses like salmonella, which are common in wild reptiles. To an East Asian diner, the same animal represents a carefully prepared, collagen-rich delicacy that connects them to centuries of medical and culinary heritage. Ultimately, the story of the turtle reveals that our culinary taboos are not permanent truths. They are the products of historical choices. When the West faced the depletion of its favorite marine reptile, it invented an imitation, passed conservation laws, and embraced the animal as a pet. When the East faced the same ecological pressure, it built farms, integrated the animal into its medical philosophy, and kept it on the plate. We do not simply eat what is available. We eat what our history, our laws, and our culture allow us to see as food.